Hi there. Welcome to Through the Bible in 1 Year. This is part 2. We are on day 101. 101 days we've been doing this. If you remember yesterday, Samuel gave his speech. Saul had been the king for just about a year. And he gave his speech warning the people, telling them he had done nothing wrong. And they agreed with this and said, I gave you your king as you asked. God didn't want you to have a king, but you wanted a king, so he gave you a king. And if you or your king turn away from God, he will destroy both of you. Okay? Warn them. So let's jump in today. And there's only 2 chapters, but they're long chapters. And we will turn this off. And we'll get into it. By this time, Saul had reigned for 1 year. In the second year of his reign, he selected 3,000 special troops and took 2,000 of them with him to Michmash, and Mount Bethel, while the other 1,000 remained with Saul's son, in Gibeah, in the land of Benjamin. The rest of the army was sent home. Then Jonathan attacked and destroyed the garrison at the Philistines at Geba. The news spread quickly throughout the land of the Philistines, and Saul sounded the call to arms throughout Israel. He announced that he had destroyed the Philippine garrison and warned his men that the army of Israel stank to high heaven as far as the Philistines were concerned. What are we reading? Oh, we're reading the wrong one. That's why it sounds kind of weird. We are going to shift over to the NIV. There we go. Okay, yeah. Let's start 4 over. So all Israel heard the news. Saul has attacked the Philistine outpost, and now Israel has become obnoxious to the Philistines. Right. Stink to high heaven. A Living Bible does weird stuff. And the people were summoned to join Saul at Gilgal. The Philistines assembled to fight Israel with 3,000 chariots, 6,000 charioteers, and soldiers as numerous as the sand on the seashore. That is a huge, huge army, right? They went up and camped at Michmash, east of Beth Aven. When the Israelites saw that this situation was critical and that their army was hard pressed, they hid in caves and thickets among the rocks and pits and cisterns. Some Hebrews even crossed the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead. Saul remained at Gilgal, and all the troops with him were quaking with fear. He waited 7 days, the time set by Samuel, but Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and Saul's men began to scatter. So he said, Bring me the burnt offering and the fellowship offerings. And Saul offered up the burnt offering. Just as he finished making his offering, Samuel arrived, and Saul went out to greet him. What have you done? Asked Samuel. You know who's still in charge, right? Saul replied, When I saw that the men were scattering, and you did not come at the set time, and the Philistines were assembling at Michmash, I thought, now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the Lord's favor, so I felt compelled to offer the burnt offering. You have done a foolish thing, Samuel said. You have not kept the command of the Lord your God gave you. If you had, he would have established your kingdom over Israel for all time. But now your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart and appointed him ruler of his people because you have not kept the Lord's command. Wow. I don't know who that is, right? Then Samuel left Gilgal and went up to Gibeah and Benjamin, and Saul counted the men who were with him. They numbered about 600. Wow. And the Philistines have millions, basically. Israel without weapons. Saul and his son Jonathan and the men with them were staying at Gibeah in Benjamin while the Philistines camped at Michmash. Raiding parties went out from the Philistine camp in 3 different detachments. One turned toward Ophrah in the vicinity of Shaul, another toward Beth-Hora, and the third towards the borderland overlooking the valley of Zeboim, facing the wilderness. Not a blacksmith could be found in the whole land of Israel, because the Philistines had said, Otherwise the Hebrews will make swords or spears. So all Israel went down to the Philistines to have their plow points, mattocks, axes, and sickles sharpened. The price was 2/3 for a shekel. for sharpening plow points and mattocks, and a third of a shekel for sharpening forks and axes, and for repointing whatever goad is. So on the day of the battle, not a soldier with Saul and Jonathan had a sword or a spear in his hand. Only Saul and his son Jonathan had them. Jonathan attacks the Philistines. Now a detachment of Philistines had gone out to the pass at Michmash. One day Jonathan, son of Saul, said to his young armor-bearer, "Come, let's go over to the Philistine outpost on the other side," but he did not tell his father. Saul was staying on the outskirts of Gibeah under the pomegranate tree at Migron. With him were about 600 men, among whom was Ahijah, who was wearing an ephod. I'm not sure what that is. Okay, let's see what that is. Okay, wearing an ephod. Ephod, type of apron that, according to the Hebrew Bible, was worn by the high priest of Israel. An artifact and an object to be revered in ancient Israelite culture, and was closely connected with auricular practices and priestly ritual. Basically, prophet's garbs. It's interesting. He was wearing prophet stuff, right? He was the son of Ichabod's brother, Ahitub, son of Phinehas, son of Eli, the Lord's priest in Shiloh. No one was aware that Jonathan had left. On each side of the pass that Jonathan intended to cross to reach the Philippine outpost was a cliff. One was called Bozez, the other Senah, and the cliff stood to the north toward Michmash, and the other toward Geba. Jonathan said to his young armor-bearer, "Come, let's go over to the outposts of those uncircumcised men. Perhaps the Lord will act in our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few." "Do all that you have in mind," his armor-bearer said. "Go ahead. I am with you, heart and soul." Wow, that's loyalty, huh? Jonathan said, "Come on, then. We will cross towards them and let them see us. If they say to us, 'Wait, they will come to you,' we will stay where we are and not go to them. But if they say, 'Come up to us,' we will climb up, because that will be our sign that the Lord has given them into our hands." So both of them showed themselves to the Philistine. "Look," said the Philistines, "the Hebrews are crawling out of the holes they were hiding in." The men of the outpost shouted to Jonathan and armor, "Come up to us and we'll teach you a lesson." So Jonathan said to his armor-bearer, "Climb up after me. The Lord has given them into the hand of Israel." Jonathan climbed up, using hands and feet, with his armor-bearer right behind him. The Philistines fell before Jonathan, and his armor-bearer followed and killed behind him. In that first attack, Jonathan and his armor-bearer killed some 20 men in an area of about half an acre. Wow. Israel routs the Philistine. The panic struck the whole army, those in the camp in the field, and those in the outposts, and the raiding parties, and the ground shook. The ground shook? Well, it was a panic sent by God. Oh. Saul's lookout at Gibeah and Benjamin saw the army melting away in all directions. Then Saul said to the men who were with him, "Muster the forces and see who has left us." When they did, it was Jonathan and his armor-bearer who were not there. Saul said to Ahijah, "Bring the ark of God." At this time it was with the Israelites. While Saul was talking to the priests, the tumult in the Philistine camp increased more and more. So Saul said to the priest, "Withdraw your hand." Then Saul and all his men assembled, and when it went to the battle, they found the Philistines in total confusion, striking each other with their swords. Those Hebrews who had previously been with the Philistines had gone up with them to their camp, went over to the Israelites who were with Saul and Jonathan. When all the Israelites who had hidden in the hill country of Ephraim heard that the Philistines were on the run, they joined the battle in hot pursuit. So that day the Lord saved Israel, and the battle moved on beyond Beth-aven. Jonathan eats honey. Now the Israelites were in distress that day because Saul had bound the people under oath, saying, "Cursed be anyone who eats food before evening comes, before I have avenged myself on my enemies." So none of the troops tasted food. The entire army entered the woods, and there was honey on the ground. When they went into the woods, they saw the honey oozing out, yet no one put his hand to his mouth, because they feared the oath. But Jonathan had not heard that his father had bound the people with the oath, so he reached out the end of his staff that was in his hand and dipped it into the honeycomb. He raised it to his mouth, and his eyes brightened. Then one of the soldiers with him, "Your father bound the army under strict oath, saying, 'Cursed be anyone who eats food today. That is why men are faint.'" Jonathan said, My father has made trouble for the country. See how my eyes brightened when I tasted a little of this honey. How much better it would have been if the men had eaten today some of the plunder they took from their enemies. Would not the slaughter of the Philistines have been even greater? That day after the Israelites had struck down the Philistines in Michmash and Adadon, they were exhausted. They pounced on the plunder and taking sheep, cattle, and calves, they butchered them on the ground and ate them together with the blood. Oh, bad news! You're not supposed to do that. And someone said to Saul, "Look, the men are sinning against the Lord by eating meat that has blood in it." "You have broken faith," he said. What are they talking this year? Someone said to Saul. "You have broken faith," he said. "Roll a large stone over here at once." Then he said, "Go out among the men and tell them, each of you bring me your cattle and sheep and slaughter them here and eat them. Do not sin against the Lord by eating meat with blood still in it." So everyone brought his ox that night and slaughtered it there. Then Saul built an altar to the Lord. It was the first time he had done this. Saul said, "Let us go down and pursue the Philistines by night and plunder them till dawn, and let us not leave one of them alive." "Do whatever seems best to you," they replied. But the priest said, "Let's inquire of God here." So Saul asked God, "Shall I go down and pursue the Philistines? Will you give them into Israel's hand?" But God did not answer him that day. So Saul therefore said, "Come here, all of you who are leaders of the army. Let us find out what sin has been committed today. As surely as the Lord who rescues Israel lives, even if the guilt lies with my son Jonathan, he must die." But not one of them said a word. Saul then said to all the Israelites, "You stand over there. I and Jonathan, my son, stand over here. Do what seems best to you," they replied. Then Saul prayed to the Lord, God of Israel, "Why have you not answered your servant today? If the fault is in me or my son Jonathan, respond with Urim. But if the men of Israel fall with Thummim." Jonathan and Saul were taken by lot, and the men were cleared. Saul said, "Cast a lot between me and Jonathan my son," and Jonathan was taken. Then Saul said to Jonathan, "Tell me what you have done." So Jonathan told him, "I tasted a little honey at the end of my staff, and now I must die." Saul said, "May God deal with me, but be it ever so severely if you do not die, Jonathan." But the men said to Saul, "Should Jonathan die, he who has brought about the great deliverance of Israel, never, as surely as the Lord lives, not a hair of his head will fall to the ground. For he did this today with God's help." So the men rescued Jonathan, and he was not put to death. Then Saul stopped pursuing the Philistines, and they withdrew to their own land. After Saul had assumed rule over Israel, he fought against their enemies on every side: Moab, the Ammonites, Edom, the kings of Zoah, and the Philistines. Wherever he turned, he inflicted punishment on them. He fought valiantly and defeated the Amalekites, delivering Israel from the hands of those who had plundered them. Saul's family. Saul's sons were Jonathan, Ishvi, and Malchishua. The name of his older daughter was Merab, and the younger daughter was Michal. His wife's name was Ahinoam, daughter of Ammahaz. The name of the commander of Saul's army was Abner, son of Ner, and Ner was Saul's uncle. So Saul's father Kish and Abner's father were Ner, sons of Abiel. Did you get all that? Right over my head. All the days of Saul was bitter war with the Philistines, and whenever Saul saw a mighty or brave man, he took him into his service. Right? All his days. How you like that? So yeah, war and war and war. And I mean, can you hold somebody accountable if they didn't hear that? Hey, the king decreed nobody eat anything. I was over on the mountain. I didn't even hear it. And you'd think his men would have told him, But there you have it. Day 101. Let's see, tomorrow. Uh-oh. The Lord rejects Saul as king. Like that. I feel David's coming up here, huh? Samuel anoints David. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So, David in Saul's service. David and Goliath is tomorrow. So, that'll be cool. Wow, that's it'd be a long read tomorrow, but you know what? Coolness. That's very cool. So, There you have it. That's through the Bible in 1 year, day 101. It's getting to the exciting part now. Exciting part. David will come out tomorrow. David and Goliath tomorrow. I always love that story. So, till next time, keep reading. Give us a like if you think about it. Catch up on any of these you may have missed. You want to see you got the entire Bible in 1 year. You'll remember that forever. Okay? See you next time.